So today I am going to be talking about the process that I went through, the grievance that was the process I went through with this Voltron Legendary Defender fan art that I did. I'm going off of the sort of fan art prompt that I gave myself with the previous speed paint, which was John Ward from the Faith the Unholy Trinity series. And this time I have Keith and Lance from Voltron, and I'm trying to do this fun little piece with them, but we'll get into that in just a second. I'm not just talking about Voltron today with this speed paint, I'm also going to be talking about more of my process as I went through this, because as you can tell by the length of this video, I went through a lot with this one. And I'll talk a little bit more about exactly what I don't like about it at the end. This video is going to be split into two segments, one where I talk about this speed paint that we're looking at right now, and the second half where I'm talking about the changes that I made. I think I was sort of cursed to fail from the beginning, because as I'm looking at the way I'm drawing Lance's head, I didn't get the angle of his forehead quite right. I feel like his nose is a little too long, a little too wide instead of tall. Just his face, I feel like I get it to a place where I am like okay with it, but the place where it really falls apart is Keith's face. And as you can see, I gave them very similar expressions. I didn't really have a specific emotion in mind that I wanted either of them to be conveying. And in the end product, you can really see how Keith kind of has this dumbfounded look in his eyes that I really end up not liking. The circles around their heads are supposed to be astronaut helmets, and this is the second/third mistake. I wanted to go for a really simplistic, almost childlike drawing of an astronaut where you just kind of, put a circle around their head. And I was thinking, well, in the end, I'll render this and I'll make it look really nice. I'll make it look like glass. Maybe it was just that I was tired or something, I'm really not sure. It ended up looking a lot more like a kid who had just like put a fishbowl over their head and was like, "Mom, look, I'm an astronaut." In my head, I thought that I would really like that. I was like, oh, that's is simple shape language, like circle on the head equals astronaut. And that's really not how it looked in the end. It looked very cheap, and looking at it, I wasn't really happy with it. I'd started this speed paint with the intention of this being a video. I was like, well, I want to make another video, what can I draw? And I wasn't really thinking about the piece as a standalone piece. I was thinking, well, I'm gonna draw this for a video. And I think that's also sort of where the intention I had didn't really mix with the project that I was doing. Here I kind of really like Keith's expression as I'm drawing it, and I'm kind of upset that I didn't keep it here with he has this almost sort of wistful look on his face. He's not smiling, he's not frowning, which I really like. But I think it's when I go in with color maybe, or I do something with his expression that kind of ruined it for me. I don't have really any qualms with how I drew the spacesuits. I was referencing pictures of, I believe, Lance off screen, Lance in the Voltron suit. All the Voltron suits are identical, so all I needed to do was change it from blue to red to get it right for Keith. Oh, the one thing that I really love about this version is the fact that I had Keith's hair falling downward and like collecting on the roof of his astronaut helmet. I thought that that was like really pretty, coloring in the spacesuit. At this point, I was getting really tired. I was definitely not in the right headspace to be like putting something together like this. And, you know, sometimes you can really push through and you end up liking a piece and it's worth it. And other times, you know, you should have gone to bed, should have just left it for another day. And this was one of those times. Talking about the things that I could have done better, definitely I would reference pictures of like profile shots. And this one, I didn't have any references I was using for the poses. It was a picture of Lance on screen that I'm just using to grab colors from. Thinking about this from the perspective of someone who's seen Voltron and wasn't thinking what I was thinking about the like fishbowl helmets, they're gonna look at this and be like, that's not what their helmets in the show looked like. Which is valid, it's not. And that's something that I bring up in the remake. We'll talk about that when I get there. There's something about that expression on Keith's face that I just really don't like. And here I'm shading in, putting down the shadows. And I was, this is the one place where I was trying to pull myself back into it, and I was thinking, like, where is my light source coming from? And so my light source is coming from the upper right-hand corner of the piece. Immediately I put color, or I put light on Lance's nose, which, looking at it now, definitely not something that would have been in the path of the light, depending on how powerful the light source is. But I was going for a very dramatic look here. Lance's face would have been in shadow because Keith's face is, Keith is facing the light source. His face should be in the light, Lance's face should be in shadow. And here I go in looking to make that, I try to make it a hard line, and I end up just getting rid of all that definition. Oh, the shines and everything. Yeah, I'm really here. I'm just like so done with this. I'm thinking, oh, I finished this and I get to go to bed, which is just not the greatest mentality to have when you're doing stuff like this. You wanna be into it, especially when you're doing fan art of something that you really enjoy. Looking back at this, like, I just throw some stars in the background. Wasn't really thinking too much about the background. I don't really do a whole lot of definition in the background on the new version either. Oh, here I threw a gradient map over it as well to sort of give it more of a emotional bid to it. So red for Keith's side, blue for Lance's side, obviously. They're the red and blue paladins. And I do like the little light rays that I put in there. Okay, starting with the new piece, already big changes. I'm actually giving Lance a definable emotion on his face, giving him this smile. I'm not referencing an exact like profile, but I do use the old drawing as a base and correct what I think should have been corrected from the first one. So I bring in that lip, I jut his forehead out a little bit to make that plane more even. Here I'm putting in the actual Voltron helmet using references off screen, which actually, in the final product, I don't end up using the helmets. I go with the more like, oh, they're just floating in space and it's and they're fine. And here I duplicate the suit because never work harder than you have to. And here with Keith's face is where I start to dip back into bad habits. I'm following the underdrawing way too closely, and I can already tell that I don't like the shape of his face. Once I get done with his jaw here, I believe I start flipping the head so that I can compare it to Lance's, make sure that the sizes fit. I use Lance's forehead as a guide to make sure that Keith's is not necessarily matching or lining up, but that they're, you know, believable that these two are on the same plane looking at each other like this. I also copy over that helmet, but again, I end up not using those. But I do think that the helmets look good. I have two versions of the line art where I have one where that's just them with their hair, and then I have one where it's them wearing their helmets. And I really like how expressive these two characters are with their hairstyles, and so I didn't like how similar they looked with the helmets on. Like, if you just like shifted the colors, they would look like completely different people. I'm not really sure why I put these like light lines in the background just then. I was kind of thinking of doing a hard light line in the end, like having their backs be in shadow and their faces be in the light. I don't end up doing that though. I don't know. I was trying to think ahead. Now that the liner and the color are on the same layer, I am going in with a more painterly style and merging them into one combined sort of, what would you call it? A combined layer, I guess. I do still really have a very strong presence of the line art in the piece. I'm not looking for it to be super rounded or 3D. I'm a comic illustrator at heart, and I love line art. I love to have those strong defined edges. And so this is just a way to marry those two concepts together, because in the first one I do feel like there's a really defined, it looks like paint with line art on top of it, and I'm trying to not do that this time around. Lance is probably my favorite character in media. And part of it is because I looked it up when the show was still going on, and I have the same birthday as him, but at this same time, he's voiced by Jeremy Shada, who is my favorite voice actor. Jeremy Shada also voiced Finn the Human from Adventure Time, which is the show that really made me want to get into art in the first place and think like, oh, I can like do this as a thing. So I know Jeremy Shada didn't create Adventure Time or anything. That would be Pendleton Ward, which I would love to meet Pendleton Ward one day. Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be cool? It was really the character of Finn and Jeremy Shada who brought Finn to life with his voice that made me fall in love with that show. And so to hear Jeremy Shada doing another character who, like, I just love Lance so much. He's such a funny character. And I'm not going to talk about the things that I didn't like about Voltron, because in the end, for the longest time, for like a couple of years, it was my favorite show of all time. Aside from Adventure Time, of course. That's like a given. Like, if I ever say something is my favorite, just think after I say it, except for Adventure Time, in parentheses. But Voltron's a hard second. I'm a big fan of space. I always have been. I really like all the characters, so it holds a very near and dear place in my heart. Oh, and here's something else that I did. I ended up switching the format. I ended up putting Keith on bottom and Lance on top looking down at him, because I drew Keith's hair gravity going down to his shoulders, because I wasn't doing the fish helmet thing anymore. It didn't make sense for his hair to be like falling against his helmet, because the Voltron helmets are so tight to the head. So it made more sense for Lance to be the one who was defying gravity looking down at him. Here I'm just putting in some variation in color, making their cheeks just a twinge redder. I don't even know if you can really tell, but I think that it adds something. Maybe it's just me. And I futz around with the rim lighting on this for ages, because again, something that I did that isn't necessarily the best is I kept softening that rim lighting. And when you do that, it creates these like concentrations of light and these like valleys, these like peaks and valleys with the lighting. I also didn't like how white it was. I was trying to really get that vibrant rim lighting look. I go in and I erase a little bit, I go in and I add a little bit, I go in and I add different layers to make the whole piece more cohesive. Here I tinted the glow to be on Keith a little bit more purple. It has a bit of a pink look to it, but I personally think that that's fine. And Lance's has a more purpley look to it, but I'd call it sort of a periwinkle. And here I tried to add some shadows with blue, because I was thinking, oh, blue paladin. No, you gotta think about the skin tone too, which is that he has a very warm skin tone, so adding a blue to that is just going to make that look very green. And here, again, I'm going in with the gradient map and giving it that red versus blue look, which I did genuinely like from the first time. I think that that's a really cute, good use of color to have this red on one side, blue on the other side. It comes together in the middle for this like really nice muted purple, adding these little effects in the background, these clouds to add some variation to that otherwise just like tough gradient, adding in those light rays that I like so much. And I wanted to make sure that their collars and the V on their suits were definitely like had a prominent glow to them. That's something that I really wanted to emphasize. And then we're done. And we'll do a little bit of a comparison here between the first one, which don't really like that one too much, and here's the new one, which I think is a 100% huge improvement. And yeah, I love these two characters. I love, maybe not their story from the TV show, but I love them. I think that they're great, and I love what the fans of the show have done with their story. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this speed paint. If you liked it, feel free to leave a like down below. And if you want to see more speed paints from me in the future, feel free to subscribe. I don't have a set schedule yet, but maybe that'll be something that I think about soon. So, see you guys later!